trumpet, a little bit of Monica in my life, a little bit of America on my side, a little bit of rain, that's all I need, a little bit of sea, that's what I see, a little bit of Sandra in the sun, a little bit of Mary all night long, a little bit of Jessica, here I am, a little bit of you, makes me your man.
Okay.
Welcome, absent employees, business owners, borderline stalkers, and Carl to welcome, business owners, borderline stalkers, and Carl to welcome, borderline stalkers, and Carl to welcome, Carl to episode 434 of an Unearthly podcast streaming live on the 35th of December 2021, or rather the 4th of January 2022, and featuring Eve of the Daleks, written by Chris Chibnall, and starring Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, Mandip Gill as Yasmin Khan, and John Bishop as Dan Lewis. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and today I finally confirmed the difference between a migraine and a terrible headache. With me are Randy Ronson McCulloch
I nearly died today.
and Alex Fireheart.
God, I'm conflicted as to whether to make a Groundhog Day joke or a Happy Death Day joke.
The Groundhog Day joke was already in the episode.
Yeah.
Mad Matt Winchell is not with us today as he is working late and I think is actually still at work for potentially another 2 hours. So we will maybe have his thoughts, but possibly not. Otherwise, it's just the three of us. And it sounded like Rand won with his things worth recapping today.
Yeah. You ever have something happen at the exact wrong moment?
Yeah.
So, I was prepping. I took my pills, which, make me have to pee a lot. And I was just about due for one of those trips to the bathroom. I was in the middle of eating lunch or dinner, depending on how you look at it. And just before I was just going to finish, get up and go, when I swallowed a piece of chimichanga down the wrong pipe.
Ugh.
This set of coughing set up a level of spastic coughing as I've been fighting a flu or a sinus infection or something for the last few weeks. And of course, I'm trying not to let my bladder go at the same time.
Mm.
End result, it was a full 2.5, 3 minutes before I could breathe.
Yikes.
Yeah. I was dizzy, lightheaded. Oh, it was terrible. And I still can, I've got the item dislodged, but I can still kind of feel like the burn in my esophagus, or whichever one's the tube that goes to the lungs.
The brachial or whatever.
Yeah, and my brachial tubes. Thank you. My brain just died on the name.
Usually people just say the windpipe anyway, so I'm like, I think that's right.
But yeah, it's that was a close call. Other than that, I've had a quiet week. Erin went up to visit her relatives this weekend, leaving me the house for the weekend. And of course, I was fighting the horrible crud, so
gotcha.
I
Do
basically
you and her relatives not get along?
I don't go anywhere anymore. I
Gotcha.
was just popping out of my hobbit hole about to rejoin the social thing when Omicron hit.
Gotcha.
Mm.
And I went right
So,
back in my hole.
so it's more of a caution thing than anything else.
Well, that and I had the sinus infection flu or something. I'm not
Mm,
going to inflict that on her relatives.
fair, fair.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a big guy and they don't have a lot of room.
Mm.
Hmm.
And when I mean big, I mean big. I mean, my own zip code kind of big. So, you've seen me. You know how big I am.
I know I don't, because you're smaller than you used to be, by from what you said.
Oh, no, I'm probably bigger than I used to be now.
Oh, although I'm bigger than I used to be.
I got smaller and
Mm.
then I grew bigger. It's called not being able to leave the apartment for like a couple years due to, the virus. Anyway, how about you two? How's your week's been?
So my week has mostly been alternating between working on my thesis and doing my annual channel maintenance, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Um, Today was interesting because I've been kind of, I really stopped doing any sort of exercise during finals. So I started gearing up, and today I actually got my first solid, like, 30-minute workout in a while, because, you can't just go from nothing to a 30-minute workout unless you want to be miserable for the rest of the week. And I thought I was, going about a good start of the day. Then all of a sudden, first, I started having a new, like, blurry floater in my vision that made it really hard to work on the application I was working on. Then I got up and I realized I started to feel not quite nauseous, but enough that I, wanted to sit down. Uh, and I had the thought that have held the beginnings of a headache coming on. So I popped a Tylenol, ordered some comfort food, and then by the time my food arrived, I was both having, well, actually, even but before I ordered the food, I realized it was in that splitting headache territory. And by the time the food arrived, I was fully nauseous. I looked up the difference between a migraine and a headache, and I realized I was, for the first time that I'm aware of, checking literally all of the boxes for a migraine. I was like, oh, so now I understand what people actually mean when they say they get migraines. Um,
Yeah, I used to get migraines in high school.
mm,
Um, the sound of the class bell in summer school, and I
mhm.
was taking summer school voluntarily just because I didn't have anything else to do in the summer. I
Yeah.
know, I'm a pathetic human being. Meant whatever it is, they didn't use the normal ring bell. They had this high pitched wee
Ah,
sound. And every time that happened, one side of my head felt like it exploded. I mean, I was literally unable to see through one of my eyes.
gotcha.
It was bad. I had to go to the nurse.
Um, but yeah, what complicated it was, normally if I have an extremely bad headache, I'll eat something and then I'll take a nap and most of it will be over. In this case, I was too nauseous to eat, and whenever I tried to lay down, I have chronic bronchitis, so a lot of the time I just, have the cold symptoms randomly. Every time in this case I tried to lay down, I ended up needing to blow my nose. So maybe a little bit more of cold symptoms than normal, just enough to exacerbate things. So I ended up just kind of sitting there in the dark with no sound for about an hour. Finally, I was able to eat a little bit and then lie down for a few hours, which kind of mellowed it. I've still had a few symptoms since, but enough that I could actually be on the podcast. I didn't have to cancel this like I had to cancel my 2 o'clock meeting, so that's a good improvement.
Are you currently in the room with the lights out?
No, I do have the lights on because I figured trying to do a podcast with the lights out would just be worse, but I did lower the brightness on both of my monitors.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, I do find with migraines a dark room,
Hmm.
hopefully isolated from sound, relatively helps. Or if you do have a sound, it's a mild white noise-ish sound,
Mm.
like
Yeah, that There were times when I had to keep it completely quiet and times where I could put on some really soft-spoken YouTube videos.
Yeah, I used to have one of those like natural sounds music tapes, like sounds of the rainforest or
Mm.
waves upon the shore kind of thing.
I had a feeling that it would feel like drums on my head if I put that on, so I didn't.
If you put it on with really low volume, it's not too bad.
Mm.
But you have to be really careful because anything too loud and your brain just sets off again.
Right. Yeah, that was part of the reason I stayed in the dark for so long because I was afraid that the second I sat down at my computer, everything would flare back up. But I also knew I wanted to test it and make sure that it wasn't going to be as we start streaming that I back out.
Hmm.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you think about it, humanity for the past 20, 30 years, our bodies have just been inundated by audio visual stimuli.
Yep.
I mean, back in the day, the television was on, but it was, usually over in the corner of the living room,
Hmm.
and it was easily overpassable, or a radio.
Especially the past 2 years, just in the first 4 months of COVID, the amount of screen time I got made my glasses prescription that much worse. So just imagine what it's been like in the year and a half since then.
Yeah, I'm waiting till I'm pronounced legally blind, let me tell you. Of course, by
In
that
more
by that I'm
positive
hoping they can just stream the data directly into my cerebral cortex. So,
in
um,
more positive news, when I woke up from my nap, I did get confirmation that I'm teaching my first course in the fall, and that's going to be a social psychology course. So, yay, my first class is not going to be stats, which by all accounts is as horrible to teach as it is to learn, at least the first time. But yeah, so I've been kind of next semester I'll be taking my how to teach seminar. So I was kind of that's what I was doing before the podcast was looking up example syllabi to start thinking about how I'm going to teach that.
okay. How about you, Alex? How's your week been? Or actually, how's your two
Not too
weeks been? How
bad.
how was your Christmas?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, Christmas this year specifically was one of those ones where I'm just realizing, fuck, I really am lonely.
Yes,
So,
my
it,
Christmas was more or less, well, this happened.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, I mean, I reconnected with a friend from high school recently, so that was like, oh, that's cool. Um, when he actually has free time, we might actually be able to hang out again. Um, but he has a wife and kid, so
Mm.
that and a full time job. So it's like probably not going to happen much, but it might happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
all of my friends from high school are either married or dead or in jail.
I feel like with me, it's mostly just most of the people I knew, let alone was friends with in high school, all moved. um, which I'm always jealous of because I fucking hate my hometown. But oh well, I can't afford to
Yep.
move, so I haven't.
Most of the people I knew from high school are either married, have kids, or both.
You
Hmm.
don't have any of the dead or in jail?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, same.
Um, there might be a few, but if so, they were people I never had on social media to really know like what's up in their lives.
Hmm.
Oh yeah. Well, mine predated social media.
Yeah.
I've always been of the if you're not on Facebook, that means you don't want me to know what's going on in your life, and I leave it at that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've had a few friends try to reconnect with me over Facebook. I'm like, I remember you. You pretty much sold me out to this gang. Fuck you.
Ah,
uh, um, yeah, been a lot of just like up and down emotional roller coaster in certain parts, and then also recently it decided that it was uh going to be insanely hot. Like it is, like it's hotter to the point that just sitting here, even though I've got a fan on, like I wish I had aircon in this part of the flat, but I don't. And like with the back door open to let a breeze in if there is one, just sitting here is enough to make me feel like kind of sweaty and gross.
What's the
Um
temperature there?
uh
You can give it in Celsius if you need to.
about 31 degrees Celsius, but it's also probably fairly high humidity
Yeah.
given the state I live in.
I hate when
That's
weather apps don't give the humidity. Like that should be
that's the
mandatory.
mid to upper 80s. That's usually
Mm.
about the time I close my windows and start the aircon around here.
Yeah. And like a couple of days ago, it got up to, like, as I brought up before stream, a couple of days ago, it got up to, well, actually, no, it might have even just been yesterday. It got up to like 36 Celsius, which is about like
That's mid 90s.
almost 97.
Mm.
Yep. That's
So Fahrenheit. So yeah, I was like, fuck this. I mean, I'm not
yeah.
surprised because we've actually been having decent winters up here, which isn't normal. And so I was always assuming the past, like in 2021 and 2020, when that happened, I was like, wow, this is great to have an actual cold winter, but that probably means that summer's going to be worse. And I've been right both times.
But by comparison, when I went for my walk this morning, it was in the negative single digit Celsius.
Huh.
Yeah, we've got snow up here. I ain't leaving the house, so I'm not caring, but one of the times Aaron was traveling up there was just after up to her relatives, was just after the weather forecast had said those wonderful two words that I hate so much. Wintry mix.
Mm.
If you don't know what wintry mix is, that's a mix of snow, rain, sleet, and freezing rain.
God, I mean, I know somewhere. I feel like I've heard that somewhere in the US recently went from having like one of the hottest days on record, apparently, to like snow a few days later. So
Yeah,
that's
the temperature has been nuts. It's like Mother Nature has had bipolar syndrome because
mm,
one day it'll be 60 some degrees and then the next day it's in the 20s and snowing. And we should not get that temperature flux within 24 hours, yet we are.
I
Um,
remember last January we had a day where it was like 13 Fahrenheit and then it was like 86 Fahrenheit the next day. To the point where I was like, I just don't know how to fucking dress when I leave my apartment.
the answer is don't leave the apartment. Yeah, it's been weird. It also doesn't help that not that long ago, Kentucky was flattened. They just had the worst set of tornadoes just rip through western Kentucky.
Ugh.
I had friends that I was talking to in St. Louis, Missouri, and they had to take shelter because the storm went through them, hit the
Mm.
Mississippi River, gained power,
Ugh.
and then slammed into Kentucky like a frickin' hammer of Thor.
Damn.
And I'm like, wait a
Any
minute, it's like December. This should not be happening.
any last personal news before we go on to today's show?
Ah.
Not that I can think of.
Mm.
Anybody get any cool presents?
Not
The
really.
only
Just
Anybody?
present the
Anybody?
only present I got was a $35 check that I used to buy myself a nice dinner.
yeah.
I
All
have.
I
I
got
got.
was a
I got a $25 gift card to Red Lobster, which is going to
got
mean that
a
at some point I'm going to go to Red Lobster, sit in there, get a glass of iced tea, and just nom cheddar biscuits for like 3 hours.
No, that said, I didn't actually buy anyone Christmas gifts, but I figured that's, since being non-religious, it feels more and more of a farce to do so each year. But what I
Eh,
plan to do is when I get my financial aid this month to do a New Year's gift for people.
I don't feel like that.
Hmm.
Christmas is more commercial than religious these days anyway.
Mm.
Yeah, like I've joked to people before that Christmas will absolutely outlive religion at
Yes.
this point. So long as capitalism is still a thing, Christmas will continue to be a thing.
I am getting annoyed because for a while it seemed like post Christmas sales and post New Year's sales were the best ones. So I stopped buying things until after Christmas. And then it's like something changed in the patterns. And now there's no good post New Year's sales anymore like there used to be.
Well, things are a lot different now that the Amazon has basically defeated all commerce.
Mm-hmm.
So you're now at the whim of Jeff Bezos.
Although that said, I've stopped buying clothes on Amazon because every time I buy 3XL clothes on Amazon, I get here and they're like an XL at best, and half the time I can't put them on. So I've been buying them from brands where I know they're shipping from the United States. Even
Eh,
if it's not
Oh.
made in the US, I know it's made for US bodies.
yeah, no, Amazon don't have clothes in my size.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I have to buy
Like
from King.
I just bought myself a new suit and I bought it on king size.
There's my shopping site right there.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, you want to send me a Christmas present? Send me a gift card to King size. Fuck you, and then next week we're going to come up and find Jeff Bezos has purchased King size.
Yeah, would not be
On damn
surprised.
Amazon.
Yeah.
All right, so today's show.
Yes. On today's show, first of all, we've got a little news about channel updating. Then we're going to go on to our normal birthdays and regular news. Then I had a rant prepared, but I'm going to skip it this week.
Ah,
Hmm.
Um, and we're going to move on to Geek Talk, where apparently 2 weeks has been enough for people to catch up with a lot of stuff. Be grateful we don't have Matt here, because that would be we would be well past our limit. I mean, I was looking at the stuff we have and going, come on, guys.
if I wasn't working on my thesis so much, I would have had a bunch of movies that I was saving for next week. Instead, I'll watch them over the next few days.
Okay, and then of course our episode summary, our review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. I do have a rant about the episode, but that'll be in the episode review.
Hmm.
So, first things first, channel update. Take it away, Bill.
Yes, so as I often do around this time of the year for various reasons, I was doing some maintenance on the channel. And this year, it's a lot of what I started last year kind of hit some completion. Plus, I think I spent more time on it this year. So I've added a few new sections to our YouTube page. All 17 of our season playlists, yes, this is season 17, can now be found in one place. And a bit farther down on our channel, all 7 of the seasons that we've covered live, plus class, can be found. There's also playlists for various monsters. I need to update still the Cybermen and Master ones, but most of them are up there now. There's a playlist for the 51 Big Finish audios we reviewed, and each of the Doctors. So if you're new to an Unearthly podcast or you want to relive some old memories, now is a great time to dig through our history and give it a lesson. A lesson. I wrote listen for some reason, but it's lesson. No, it is listen. Lesson is not the right word. I don't know. My brain is even with a
Reboot, Bill.
script, I can't
Reboot.
speak. Yes, reboot. Speaking of issues, we also apparently had a bit of an issue in 2017 and 18. I don't know if this was that Twitch changed their procedure and I was slow to adjust to it, or maybe we had some copyright blocks that were removed and I didn't notice. But either way, there were a few episodes from 2017 and 2018 that were previously private that I've now made public. So if you've been following on YouTube and you saw a bunch of new videos, I mentioned that in some of the video descriptions, but that's why.
Okay. So, do you have a playlist for the dark and fuzzy days, Bill? The freaking Fraps days?
That would just be like season 1 and season 2, which those were hard playlists to put together because some of them were on the old Man in Black Reviews YouTube channel. Some of them were on the Mad Matt YouTube channel. Some of them were on the new Mad Matt YouTube channel, and some of them were on the Unearthly podcast channel.
I mean, until
So,
I bitched enough that we got our own channel.
yeah. So the older playlists actually took a bit of effort putting together, but most of that I actually did last year, and I kind of just finished it up this year.
Okay. So, that's the channel update. Moving on to news and birthdays. Let me... Of course, this happens just as I lose my phone. Which is what I was using to keep the script on. Where did you go, phone? There you are. I have to do this because I'm technical director and I'm doing Matt's and my job today.
Yep.
And that's a pain in the butt because that means I have to my main window has to control what you all see, and I still have to read the script. Okay, so birthdays. Starting with December 25th, it's the birthday of Georgia Tennant, who played Jetty back in 2008, back before she married 10th Doctor David Tennant, and started doing audios for Big Finish. She turned 37. 2 days later, on the 27th, is the birthday of Christopher Benjamin on the left, who played Henry Gordon Jago. He turned 87. To his right there was, of course, the late Lightfoot. May he rest in peace. And then 2 days later, on the 29th, is the birthday of Bernard Cribbins, who, of course, played Wilfred Mott from 2007 to 2010. He turned 93. Yep, Cribbins is getting up there. I don't know how much longer we'll have him with us. Let's enjoy him while we can.
Mm-hmm.
Next is New Year's Day and the birthday of Sophie Okonedo, who played Queen Liz the 10 back in 2010, 2011. She turned 53.
Will she outlive Liz the second?
Well, we don't know, but we're making jokes about that on another channel. I personally think that whenever she's not in public eye, Queen Elizabeth, takes a nice bath in formaldehyde or something to keep her well preserved. Anyway, the next day is the birthday of Deborah Watling, who played Victoria in 67 to 68 under Second Doctor. And why did my brain just fail? Patrick Troughton.
Yep.
She would have been 74, but she died in 2014 at the age of 69. We reported that death. I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was so long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, happy birthday to Georgia, Christopher, Bernard, Sophie, and Deborah. Not bad for 2 weeks worth of birthdays.
True.
All right, moving forward into news. The overnight viewing figures for Doctor Who, Eva the Daleks is in, and it had an audience of 3.21 million viewers, according to the unofficial overnights. This is a drop of over 1 million from last year's New Year's Day episode, but everybody was down. This made Doctor Who the 6th most watched program of the day, with BBC One's The Tourist taking the top spot with 4.5 million. Again, these are not the final numbers. The Barb will post those in the next week. This episode also had an AI, or Audience Appreciation Index, value of 77, which puts it right in the Chibnall middle, I think.
Hmm.
So, the next piece of news. We know what the next special is called. It is Legend of the Sea Devils.
Makes this the first Sea Devil episode since the Fifth Doctor, I think.
Yeah. And that was a horrible outing for the Sea Devils. Here you
And
can see.
technically, if you go by like them being the only, as far as we know, villain, then that would be the first since the Third Doctor era.
Yeah, this would be their first solo outing since their original appearance. And here you can see the updated Sea Devil's mask. What do you think, guys?
Well, it's a lot better than the than their original one.
I don't have a vivid memory of the old Sea. Or actually, I think the old Sea Devil mask is on the same photo. But yeah, I think it looks pretty decent.
See if they put a comparison.
We only get the one. We only get like the one little.
The one little thing at the end of the trailer. We see like a 3-second clip.
Yeah. So we at least see that their eyes will move.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming that there'll probably be some animatronics to help the mouth move.
So what's the over under on them being voiced by Nick Briggs?
I mean,
that I haven't
pretty
heard.
Likely.
Nick Briggs voices everything.
I guess.
Let's see if I can
forget what they usually sound like. So
I can't remember myself. So here I'm going to put this in the channel. All right, not in the channel, excuse me. I'm going to post this up. Just let me get it in a new tab.
Because I'll say this much, I prefer these outfits to the like random samurai looking things they gave them for Warriors of the Deep. And at least in this case, them having like an East Asian influenced outfit makes a lot more sense because of the setting.
Yes. So now appearing on the stream is a picture of the Silurians from the Third Doctor era. Or not the Silurians, the Sea Devils. Yes.
Yeah.
So they actually don't look all that different. It looks definitely like a modern touch-up of the same of a similar design.
Yeah. So essentially, sort of like how the Chibnall Sontarans were essentially an update of classic Sontarans. It's just an update rather than a complete rehaul.
And it doesn't look like we're going to find out that this one's a mask that they just take off and have a painted human face underneath like we did with the Silurians.
God, now I'm almost.
I'm wondering if this is going to be them trying to explain the whole samurai outfit, because Chibnall likes to explain things.
Maybe.
Although Chibnall, I believe, wrote the first appearance of the Silurians in Modern Who.
Yeah.
So this might have been something he's wanted to do since 2010.
Maybe. I guess it depends on whether he wanted to do that Silurian story or was just handed it.
So I'm now showing the samurai Sea Devil outfit from Warriors of the Deep that we were talking about.
And the back of their head, or their ears or whatever, look like they shouldn't even fit under that helmet.
No, they shouldn't.
Yeah. And I half think that outfit choice was just to like hide the cheapness of the mask or something.
Oh, I bet, because I think they used the same mask, only it had deteriorated badly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
That
that's
that'll
kind of
happen
why.
over a decade.
Yeah, I
Yep.
was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that's why some of the Sontarans and old who look so crap is just because they've tried to reuse them with people who don't fit them properly, and also they've just been sitting in storage.
Yep, that's what happened here too. And they
Mhm.
just, put a new spray paint of whatever over it
Hmm.
because
Of
Doctor
course,
Who
now
didn't
that
have a lot of budget in those days.
of course, now that we mentioned Warriors of the Deep, I wonder if this is going to remember that the Sea Devils were just a name they were given rather than a name they gave themselves.
I don't know.
Because Warriors of the Deep has them refer to themselves
Mhm.
as Sea Devils, even though that
Oh,
was a name they were given. Sort of like Ice Warriors to a point.
and the
Yeah.
Silurians.
I think the Silurians kind of. I forget if they actually do give a name or
No,
not, but they just
they
kind
were
of went
named
with it.
because that's when they were thought like they were thought to be from the Silurian era or something like that.
Ah, yeah.
And like then even the Doctor was like, actually that's wrong in their first appearance, but the name stuck.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Um.
Oh, well.
So yeah, we've
Yeah, I don't
got.
think we ever got. I don't think we ever got a name for the Sea Devils officially, so they've just called
They're
themselves
just
Sea Devils.
they're just an offshoot of the Silurians. So
Yeah.
So yeah, we got a lot of Chinese actors in this. Um. Playing Chinese pirates and villagers.
we've
So
come a long day from Talons of Wang Chiang.
Yeah.
well, yeah, now they can make those kind of callings and actually get a response.
Mm,
There were not a lot of Chinese people in British theater in the 70s or 60s. And that's because there was probably a lot of discrimination in
mm,
the acting schools.
Yeah,
yeah.
that goes along with coming a long way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now we have.
But yeah, it does seem like it could be a potentially very interesting, pretty unique story. Um, I mean, it seems like it would. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to be quite as farcical as the last pirate episode we had on Doctor Who. Maybe that's reading too much into so relatively little bit of footage, but it looks like it'll be a little more played seriously than that.
Either that or it's going to descend into wire fu.
I would kind of be okay with either one, to be honest.
Hey, I really don't need Crouching Tiger, Hidden Sea Devil, to be honest. Anyway, moving on. The only thing we've got left in our news is the Big Finish releases, and they had 3 over the last 2 weeks. The first is the annual writing winner, which was Joe Vevers this year, who wrote the short trip The Licherick Abomination. I probably mispronounced that, and I apologize.
That looks Welsh.
That it does look very Welsh. That the Y the HYR gives it away. But anyway, it is
It's
performed by
probably
Jacob Dudman.
pronounced lyric or something.
Yeah.
Probably. Anyway, it is free for download from the Big Finish website. I grabbed it this afternoon, so it is still available.
Hmm.
Next on the list is Christopher Eccleston performing Old Friends um, with John Colshaw, Warren Brown, and Eleanor Lawless. John Colshaw is taking up the voice of the Brigadier. And then the last release is a Fifth Doctor adventure, Doctor Who 40, with Peter Davidson, Janet Fielding, Sarah Sutton, and Matthew Waterhouse, and featuring voices of others and Nick Briggs as the Cybermen and Ice Warriors, because Nick Briggs.
And I saw something apparently, I don't know if it's a bonus, it's people are talking about it like a bonus story called I Chameleon that comes with it.
I haven't heard anything.
Hmm.
Let me check the news a little more. And let's see, Big Finish. You have to ask me a question I don't know. Let's see, Secret of Telos, God of War. I see nothing about that.
It was released on the bonus downloads of the audio anthology 40 Volume 1, according to TARDIS.
Well, Big Finish's official page doesn't say anything about it.
Gotcha. So unless you bought it, you probably wouldn't have any way to know that it was there.
And I haven't bought it, because I have no
Mhm.
money.
It's part of it says the Interludes series, so I don't know if it's supposed to be going to be released separately later on or what.
Yeah, okay.
It's something they're doing in 2022.
That, yes, okay. That I had. Yes, it's a bonus download thing that's going on. And yes, 40 Volume 1 gets Eye Chameleon. And yeah, it is absolutely a bonus. There are going to be 3 coming out this year. This is the first, which is a 5th Doctor adventure. The next one will be released in May, and it will be attached to a 6th Doctor adventure. Title has yet to be announced. And then in June, the third one
Please
will
be
release.
Frobisher.
Is Silver and Ice for a 7th Doctor adventure. That sounds like a Cybermen.
Cybermen and Ice Warriors.
I don't know. It could just be Cybermen and like a Return to Telos kind of thing. But we'll see. But yeah, that's January, May, and June. So that wasn't listed as a release from there. That is a bonus that you only get for getting the download. And this is an audio long hour book read by Dan Starkey. And yeah, is a free bonus for downloading 40. Good catch. So, something else that Big Finish announced is that they have cast a new 2nd Doctor. And that is, they have cast Patrick Troughton's own son, Michael, will be taking his father's role in Big Finish Audio. Up till now, Fraser Hines has been doing the Doctor alongside his own voice as Jamie.
Right.
And so Fraser's going to step back, just play Jamie, and let Michael Troughton take the role of his father as the 2nd Doctor. Michael says he kind of plays it as a mix of himself and his dad.
I know I saw people surprised that it wasn't Patrick's other son, but I don't know the context between why they would be surprised.
No, I think
Might
the
just
other
be the other son is younger.
or sounds more like Patrick.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know,
Because
like Sean Pertwee, he might just refuse to do it.
Right.
I feel like he's narrated stuff for the 2nd Doctor, but never actually voiced.
Yeah, that's
the
what
2nd Doctor.
Yeah, there's just a thing of trying to step into those shoes that you're always going
Yeah.
to feel like you're not quite filling them.
Yeah. I mean, Plus, David has like the Peloton stuff that they can bring him back for anyway.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's the reason Sean says he won't do. He won't ever play the Third Doctor, except as dress up for
Mm.
Halloween. Is because trying to do that role, he just feels like he'd never actually fully fill those shoes.
Which is fair enough.
Yep. Regardless of the fact that a million fans are like, do it.
Hmm.
And if you've ever seen him, I swear his face is like directly
Oh
his
yeah,
father's.
he's
His
he's
hair is
absolutely
different,
one of
but his
those.
face, yeah.
Yeah, he's absolutely one of those people who's aged into looking like his dad.
All right,
It's pretty
so
uncanny until he talks.
yep, and that's the issue. I think is his talking.
Hmm.
All right, so those are the three that we've had. Three new releases for Big Finish, and that does it for the news. Moving on to our Geek Talk section. Thank you, God, because my voice is starting to go.
All right, so the first couple things are streaming. So I'll start with the first one, which less its own series, but kind of a mini series as any CW crossover event is. This year was the Flash Armageddon, and unlike past crossover events, it was very clearly more of a Flash story than a big multi-story series crossover. In some ways, I actually felt it was a lot like a regular comic arc from certain periods. By which I mean, one episode was a crossover with Legends of Tomorrow, another episode was a crossover with Supergirl, another was a crossover with Black Lightning, and so on, which is very reminiscent from when you would be reading Spider Man and Wolverine would be in one episode, and then Punisher would be in another episode, so on and so forth. Actually, I think that still kind of happens today in some of the comics I've read, so it hasn't changed all that much. So at first, I was a little disappointed by this format, but it did actually help tell the story and was not as disjointed as it initially seemed. The story centered around a time traveler coming to kill Barry Allen for destroying the world in the future, who considers himself to be a do the tough things to get things done sort of type. But over time, his actions cause him more and more to be in the anti hero, anti villain gray area. The premise of the story is that Flash suffers a great tragedy, which causes him to lose his mind. And you do see some of that. He does suffer great tragedy, but everything happens so coincidentally that it doesn't take a lot of it doesn't take seeing the big reveal to realize that the true cause is the same person who causes every single tragedy in Barry's life ever. So the first half of the story I mentioned, I forget if it was on the podcast or after the podcast last time, but it's god awful depressing as Flash seasons can be, which is something I hope the show works on for the rest of season 8. But it does end on a positive note and possibly sets up some subplots for the rest of Flash season 8.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't been able to watch the CW verse in like 2-3 years just because it got too depressing.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, I mentioned it's season 8. Arrow ended after 8 seasons, so if Flash goes on to season 9, it'll officially be the longest running Arrowverse show. Which, as I mentioned at the last season finale, I felt like it's run its course and was ready to end. So I kind of don't want to see season 9, but we'll see how season 8 goes.
You
I
get,
almost
I
want.
mean, usually for me, 7 seasons is about perfect for a show.
Mm.
Hmm.
Hell,
Um,
even Doctor Who's never had one version of the show go on for more than 7 seasons.
correct.
Hmm.
They have to change the main. I mean, Doctor Who is the exception because you can change the actor, you can change the cast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, hell, you want to look at movies. The most any James Bond actor did was like at least 7 in a row,
But
and then switched.
But I look at shows like Smallville, which ran for like 11 seasons, and
Oh,
it felt like it was dragging.
I was gonna
It
say,
really
hasn't like Supernatural been going for like
Supernatural
over
has been, I
10
think it's
again?
finally over, but it was going forever. And a lot of
Mm.
those seasons felt like they were like, "Oh my god, isn't this over yet?" I mean,
The okay.
it got to the point where it was like, "Aren't these guys too old for this shit?"
Yeah, that and
They
a lot of shows that reach a certain point where it feels more like they're coming up with stories to justify going on for another season rather than having
mm,
another season because there's a good story to tell.
Uh,
yeah.
The other show I watched on streaming, and I believe Alex also managed. Yeah, Alex did manage to
Yeah.
watch this before today. Is Hawkeye. Hawkeye is definitely the MCU's version of a Christmas special for 2021. I personally would say it's equal parts Christmas comedy, action thriller, and buddy cop movie. There's Christmas music in every episode, but that also doesn't undercut the tension of the action scenes either. For the story
Mm.
itself, it all revolves around the theme of facing the consequences of your actions. The main antagonist and the main protagonist were both inspired by different periods of Hawkeye's life. And the theme of consequences also carries through with several other characters' subplots as well. On the comedy side, how many action thrillers do you know of in which you can say that a troop of LARPers plays a larger role than expected? Uh, and as a final note, I don't think Marvel intended it this way, but there's one scene where, for just a moment, it comes off as if Kate is being propositioned for a threesome.
I bet somebody at Disney was rewatching that and went, "Oh, oh shit, this is supposed to be family friendly."
That's not what's actually happening. But if you don't know all the characters in the scene, like a scriptwriter would know all the characters in the scene, obviously, but coming in as just an audience member, there's just one line where you're just like, wait a second, what are they
Context.
asking for?
Yeah, context.
Yeah.
Alex, would you like to add to that?
It's one of
Yeah,
those.
like
It's one of those
this
show. It's
is
before that. Just quickly, it's one of those things that if this was Archer, it would have been followed by phrasing.
Right.
yeah. Um, it's funny. This is the first Marvel show that I just was like, fuck it. I've got the day off tomorrow anyway, and binged in one sitting because I hadn't started it yet by the time the final episode came out. So it's just like, oh, fuck it. I'll stay up until 4
I
a.m. to watch this
I
whole
like
thing.
how when I went to bed that night, we were talking about episode one, and then I woke up in the morning and got your texts about the finale.
yeah.
How many episodes are there?
um,
6, I think.
6.
Okay,
Yeah, 6.
so
And they're
I go
like,
down. So basically clear like 3 to 5 hours out of my day to watch it.
mm,
Got it.
yeah, like so long as you're just like going ep to ep to ep
Hmm.
Yeah,
um without
that's what
stopping.
I did
Because
with um WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki
mm,
until I hit the hit
Hmm.
the end of what was out.
no, like I mean it took me longer because I kept getting distracted by talking to people. So like I started an episode and then didn't finish it until like way later or something like that in some cases. But yeah, like this is really enjoyable. I mean, I know this is absolutely my first exposure to Kate Bishop. I don't think I've read anything about her. I don't think I mean, I don't really read comics anyway, so I've never. I think I was like vaguely aware of her, but yeah, I
Same.
would not
I
be
knew
able
of her,
to.
but she wasn't in any comics I had read.
Yeah, so this is one of those things of like I
Now,
like Kate Bishop in this, but I'm not going to be able to make a comparison of like
that-
this versus what she's like in the
That
comics.
said, because Clint is so different than he is in the comics, Kate is also very different from the comics. So apparently, some of the scenes that were taken directly from the comics, they switched people because in the comics, Clint is more of like the goofy person, and Kate is, I guess, more serious. And here it's very much the opposite.
Yes. Kate
Um,
apparently premiered about 10 years after I stopped reading comics.
ah,
I was reading manga at that point in my life because I got really sick of comics just having so many spin-off titles, so many this that it was costing me literally hundreds of dollars just to keep up with, one
So that
team.
sounds like the 90s.
Yeah, that was the 90s. Also, I was getting sick of the art being really nice on the covers and absolute shit on the inside.
uh, um, yeah, like this is really fun. I don't know if I otherwise would have binged it if I wasn't just in a fuck it mood. But like it would have been interesting to have watched this a week at a time and being able to be like, wow, gee, I wonder what this is where this is gonna go. Because it's funny because I remember my main takeaway from the first episode was mainly like, wow, Kate Bishop really looks good in that John Wick suit that she's wearing at a at like a high class party that her mom's dragged her along to.
Has everybody in the universe seen John Wick but me?
I have not. I needed to watch several people react to the epic rap battle about with John Wick to actually get the references.
I'm just
And I will
asking
say,
because
I mainly jokingly refer to it as a John Wick suit because it's like all black.
Yeah, no, I just say that
Which I would call a Neo suit.
I tried watching John Wick once and I can't get past Keanu Reeves. It's amazing how much of a cyberpunk fan, and I hate Keanu Reeves with a passion. Because the man just can't act.
I mean, to be fair, I feel like John Wick usually the movies try to like play to his strengths and don't really try to make him do anything outside of what he's good at. So, you know, maybe that's just me. But yeah. Yeah, like Hawkeye. Generally, Hawkeye's really good, and it's one of those things that make me wish that he'd had more to do on screen in the movies. Especially since, for all intents and purposes, this might be the last. Like, I don't know.
I was going to
But
ask
this
if this
might
was
be
his
the last
departure from the
thing.
MCU.
I mean, I'll put it this way: it ends on a note where he could come back, but you never know. Because like maybe this was like the last thing in a renewed contract or something. Because I feel like at this point he's just kind of doing it on a if they need him, he'll do it sort of a basis.
Because I thought he came out of Endgame eager to play the character some more.
Oh yeah, but I guess like they do seem to be phasing out the original Avengers, so it would not surprise me if this is technically his swan song and he just goes off.
That said, there was an Easter egg
into the
related
sunset.
to his family that probably is probably going to be mentioned again and clarified in greater detail in the future. So I don't think it's the last we're going to see of him, but I think they're kind of saying he's passing the torch a little bit.
Yeah, like at the very least, I would say this is the start of him winding down. And even then, that's more like the character rather than like the actor necessarily wanting to stop.
Because
'Cause I
didn't he
feel like if he
break like
wanted to
both
stop
of
by
his
now, they
arms
would've.
during filming the Avengers?
Yeah. Yeah, I
In
think
one of
so.
them, I think so.
Yeah, it was either Infinity War or Endgame.
Because I know it's like most of the original cast came out of this, said, "That's it, I'm done, I'm too old of this shit." Him and Helmsworth are both like, "Yeah, let's do more!"
Yeah, Yeah. I know
Which
Hemsworth
is funny because
basically-
apparently early on that was not his attitude, and it just got more positive over time.
Yeah, he started. He was very reluctantly in this role.
Yeah.
He figured he would be in there for a movie or two and get his ass killed, and then he could walk off and say, "Yeah, I did it," and then he grew to love the character.
And I mean, Disney money probably doesn't hurt.
It might help that his character is nothing like Hawkeye from the 90s.
That's probably why. They were allow him to make his own mark, his own spin on the character, rather than make him having him have to play comic relief constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And because Chris Hemsworth just raised his hand and said, "I'll do that." I mean, take a look at Thor from like the last couple of movies.
Yeah.
He's basically comic relief while being a main character at the same time.
Even in his first movie, he's pretty much comic relief.
Like, has some over the top. Like, I guess it's just the version of comic relief he is has shifted from a more theatrical, Shakespearean kind of over the top comedic to just more like in line with everyone else comedic.
I mean, come on, beer belly Thor from frickin' Endgame. Yeah. Anyway, anything else to say about Hawkeye before we move on?
That's about it.
I think I did not include this in my notes, but Black Widow is absolutely essential viewing for Hawkeye. The latter three, so I think episode 4 is basically a direct sequel to Black Widow, and from there on, there's a subplot that's related to the post-credit scene at the end of Black Widow. So you definitely want to watch Black Widow if you're thinking of watching Hawkeye, which they're both on Disney Plus, so it shouldn't make a big difference in terms of budget or anything.
It
It shouldn't
depends
make
on if
any
I
difference in terms of budget, I should say. Just a couple extra hours.
It depends on if I come out of Black Widow going, "I want my 2 hours back."
Yeah, I will say there was a character that shows up in this that was spoiled for me that kind of pissed me off, but actually seeing the execution of said character, who I won't name because it's a spoiler, was still very fun, and I was still like, "Fuck yes, I'm glad this happened." But yeah.
All right. So, moving from Hawkeye, Bill wants to talk a bit about the original first 3 Spider movies from the early 2000s.
Yes, so I've been trying to binge the Spider-Man movies and trying not very successfully because I've gotten through 4 movies in a month and a half. But you know, I'm eventually going to make my way to No Way Home. I started with the Raimi trilogy. I had watched 2 of these movies and not the most popular one. So now I've watched them all, and I've watched them all recently.
Did you rewatch them in order?
Yes. So the first one didn't really change my opinion of it. I'm trying to just skim through my notes instead of reading them verbatim because I wrote a lot of notes. The main thing I did notice, though, was that how much of a dick Peter is to Mary Jane throughout and to other people, constantly stringing MJ along and never giving her support or consideration of her feelings. Some of this, it appears that he's kind of autistic and not really understanding ways in which what he says is unhelpful or he can't think of what to say. But a generous interpretation of that would be that it explains about half of his behavior. Another half of it is just straight up selfishness and or dickery. The entire trilogy has amazing special effects, and the only effect I have anything negative to say about, and I felt this way 20 years ago as well, is the Green Goblin costume. I have no comments about anything not aging poorly or anything like that. There's nothing I feel that about. The second movie, I had heard a lot about how good it is, and I can definitely see that. The big bad of the movie is basically work-life balance with Doc Ock playing second fiddle. And I think that's part of also why these movies are so successful, is that the theming in these movies is very strong. The villains and the heroes are strong, but there's also theming running through it. None of it just feels like a popcorn flick that's a waste of time otherwise. they all have something to say to the reader in a non-preachy way. I'm not sure that work-life conflict is truly resolved, other than Mary Jane forcing Peter to stop thinking like he needs to pick one or the other. But it at least presents the conflict in a believable way. Spider-Man 3 was the one that was the biggest difference in rewatching it for me. The first time I watched it was in theaters in 2007 because I just happened to go to the theaters a lot that year. And all I really remembered was the final act, because that's all anybody remembered of that movie was the last act and the jazz acts and all of that, the dancing scenes. But on a rewatch, I realized that the first hour or so of this movie is amazing. Harry Osborn's arc over 3 movies is coming to a head. He might be Peter's most dangerous enemy yet. There's this whole theme underlying it all of how revenge is a cycle and hurts everybody, which should have been great because revenge is kind of Venom's whole thing. And then for some reason, possibly because they wanted more time with masks off to actually show the leads' faces, Peter becomes a vindictive creep even before the Venom symbiote comes into the picture. Then there's all the musical numbers, which just feel forced in and add in extra conflicts that, again, just make you hate Peter more. And yeah, those are all just make it worse. At the time, I remember hating Topher Grace's Venom, but getting some removed from it and not having seen that 70s show in a while, he's actually not bad, except for the fact that we barely get any face time with Venom because they keep pulling it back to show his face. Whereas if we had gotten, a solid half an hour of the Venom face, it could have been really great. So other than a lot of terrible decisions in the last act of the third movie, this trilogy is extremely solid. Also, it's these are some of the best movies at making New York City be a character in and of itself, which is something I say every time these movies are brought up, but I can't stress it enough just how much New York City is a character in this trilogy.
Well, I don't know how much of you know of the backstory behind the production of these movies, Bill.
I
But
know that there was conflict between Raimi and the executor over which villain to give emphasis to, and the
no,
executives wanted Venom in it, and Raimi did not, by my
correct.
understanding.
Yes, they literally shoved Venom down Raimi's throat. He
But
had
the
a
weird
third
thing
movie.
is, the first act of the movie was perfectly written to include Venom, but then
Yes.
the last half was not.
Raimi was including Venom for Spider-Man 4.
Aha.
It was going to be a long build-up. This was going to be focusing on the end of the Osborn arc. So it
Which
was
makes
going
sense,
to be,
because if you're building up to Harry for 3 movies, having him play second fiddle to Venom is a weird decision.
Yeah.
And then the execs came down and said, "No, we want a trilogy. You're not getting a 4th movie, and you have to include Venom in this." So he basically took his notes for the 4th movie, crammed them into the 3rd, and cut where he needed.
Yeah, which is ridiculous because you could honestly do an entire trilogy with just Venom if you really wanted.
Well, mind you, yeah, that's what they're doing now. But the ongoing, the whole concept of this constantly going superhero cinematic universe hadn't fully been realized at that point.
Right.
I mean, we were still, I think, a year away from Iron Man.
We had 4 Supermans, I believe.
Yeah, but they had gone increasingly downhill. There were, X-Men were making
4
movies.
Batmans, but they had also gone increasingly downhill.
Yeah.
And then X-Men had started out strong with 2 movies, and then the 3rd one was absolute garbage. So Sony was worried that the same thing was going to happen with Spider-Man.
I mean, I still contend that if they took out the musical numbers and they just focused on revenge as the Venom plot, it still could have been a flawless movie. Maybe not. Maybe there's no such thing as flawless, but it still could have been 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 movie.
Well,
Hmm.
mind you, the musical numbers was just Sam Raimi having fun. It's like, I can't make the movie I want. Let's just have fun with this.
I mean, generally, also 3 villains is a bit much.
It
True.
is.
At least trying to give them all equal emphasis anyway. I feel like the MCU is better at having like,
And I
here's the main focus villain. These other villains are just kind of
I
there.
I definitely agree, but like I said, with the rewatch and the fact that they all fit into that revenge theme, I kind of think that the 3 villains could have worked, but it would have taken a lot more. The writing would have had to be a lot tighter than it was.
I forget if you brought this up before, but was it you or was it someone else I was talking with recently who said they hated the retcon of like Sandman being responsible for Uncle Ben's death
No, it wasn't
in
me.
Spider-Man 3?
I forget if that's something I said. It definitely feels like it comes out of nowhere. But after rewatching Spider-Man 3, I don't hate it as much as I did initially. But it still kind of feels like it came out of nowhere though.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel like it was planned from 2002. It feels like they came up with it for this movie.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's your thoughts on the 3 Spider-Man movies.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to what we're
I
going to
moved to
be as
Spider-Man 9.
a low spoiler as possible, but still possibly spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, should I take my
I will
headset off?
say-
Should I go to the bathroom?
No, I am very likely to. I'll put it this way: if it's in the trailer, I will talk about it, but otherwise, I won't. I won't even like vaguely allude. But yeah, like speaking of how you can make multiple villains work, holy shit. There are like quite a few in this. I mean, like the trailer alone tells you that the Lizard, Sandman, Doc Ock, the Green Goblin, and Electro are all in this. And they actually make it work without feeling overstuffed. It is kind of amazing. But yeah, like even as I said to Bill as well though in DMs after seeing it, like this is a movie that you have to have seen, at least in my opinion anyway, that this movie works way better if you have seen all of the Spider-Man movies up to this point.
Would you include Spider-Verse in that?
I guess all live action
Okay.
ones, because I don't think there are any references at all to Miles or Spider-Gwen or anything like that. So it's purely like the Raimi trilogy and the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Which is funny because like I initially coming out of it was like, God, this feels like my favorite. Like it might be recency bias, but this might be my new favorite Spider-Man movie. And then later realized I forgot to specify live action because I haven't rewatched Spider-Verse in a while. And to be fair, I haven't watched the Raimi or Amazing Spider-Man movies in a while, so I don't know exactly how that would order up, but I would say Spider-Verse is still way up there, and I would honestly put this way up there as well. God, Willem Dafoe is fucking great in this.
Oh,
Like,
that's what I
so
heard.
is-
I
like,
heard
I'll
that
put
a
it this
lot of
way.
I heard a lot of these villains just kind of put their masks on, and it's like they never took them off, so to speak.
If
Which
you
is a
didn't
feat
like, I will
considering
say,
that some of them, last appeared 20 years ago.
Yeah.
yeah, I will say if you didn't like Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2, he is much better here. I mean, I honestly didn't hate him, but I do like this performance of him a lot better. I mean, it is still Jamie Foxx, but he's given better writing, I guess, to work with or something. But generally, it works better here, I feel. Yeah, generally it's very interesting, and it's just, it is an amazing movie. Like, it is so much like, really what I came out of is this is a movie that feels like it is being very respectful and very, like, almost a tribute to all of the live action Sony Spider-Man movies that have come before it, rather than, like, it's sort of like how, how like Endgame had um stuff from Thor 2, even though that's one of the MCU movies that everyone seems to think is like that's the worst one or something. Like, this is sort of like that. Like, this doesn't, like, try to be like, hey, look, it's Doc Ock and Green Goblin and, these other two from movies you don't like.
Hmm.
It's like they treat them all with equal respect. And it is a very enjoyable movie. If I could have, this is a movie where if I could have afforded to, I would have absolutely have seen it like a second time at least by now, but I can't. So I didn't get the chance.
I
I will say, if you hate the Green Goblin mask, the only real spoiler I would give is that he never puts it on. And honestly, the look that he has when he's in full getup is kind of better without it.
Yeah.
so with a little bit of spoiler, but it's one that everybody knows because it hit the second the movie hit. It hit everywhere, and you were unable to avoid spoilers. Is that the other two actors from the previous Spider-Man sequels come in to play in this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Bill knew that too.
For a while, I kind of just ignored headlines or treated them as if they were reacting to speculation. But over time, I was like, well, nobody's said that they're pissed off that they didn't appear yet.
Yeah.
Ergo,
Yeah.
the internet would have collectively shit its pants if neither of the actors had returned. So
I heard that
because
both.
the entire internet is run by
Yeah.
toddlers.
So I heard that both actors did a really good job reprising the role, but
Oh yeah.
the real hero was Andrew Garfield.
Like, they did a lot. Like, I've even seen a lot of people saying that they kind of want him to get another movie now because of his performance in that.
Yeah, I heard he
And
did
I'd be
better
down for it.
in No Way Home than he did in his movies. He
um
apparently since being, decast as Spider-Man after 2, he apparently
mm,
has spent these years doing other stuff to get up his acting chops. Came back to do this and just acted his fucking heart out.
mm. I mean, I feel like the only issue I ever had with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was I didn't buy him as Peter. I bought him as Spider-Man, but I did not buy him as Peter.
And it's
Um
I haven't finished the second movie yet, which is part of why I haven't reviewed it yet. But it seems like their writing for him as Peter had a lot to do with the plots they were covering in the comics at the time that were less familiar to a lot of audiences. So that it was almost like a reimagining of the Peter Parker character in that sort of way.
Probably, yeah.
But I've just heard that if you weren't fond of him in The Amazing Spider-Man, don't let that stop you from
Yeah.
watching this
Mm.
movie.
Yeah. I mean, generally the characters from those movies, like Lizard and Electro and him, get treated very well in this. And they don't, they kind of hang a lampshade on it once, and then otherwise it's like um they're very respectful of them, and it's like, it's so great seeing those actors interact. um but yeah, it'll be interesting. I will say, um the if you if you can't be bothered sitting around to the end of the credits, watch the mid credits scene and then leave, because the end credits scene, as I told Bill, is just a trailer for, like, a flat out, like, legitimately, it is basically just the trailer for Doctor Strange 2. So if you watch that online already, yeah, don't bother sitting around until the end of the credits, because it's literally just a trailer.
Okay. That is something I wanted to know for certain.
Mm,
There is a brief scene in here with Matt Murdock. What's he's doing, I'm not going to say, but it was Charlie Cox
mm,
from the Netflix MCU shows.
mm-hmm.
And we knew he was going to be coming back in She-Hulk.
Mm.
And I believe I heard there was a cameo by at least a cameo by what's his face? The bad guy from Daredevil.
Fisk.
Yeah, Fisk. And it was played by the same guy from there. So they're kind of quasi-canonizing the Netflix series now.
At the very
They're
least, saying that it's definitely the same actors.
correct. Because now the waiting period that Netflix put on after they canceled the shows has ended.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, when I realized that Matt Murdock was there, I almost shouted. I was almost like, "What?" Because I was just like, that. I mean, fittingly enough, that kind of blindsided me. Because I was just like, "Whoa!" I did. Bloody hell, Feige! You're saying that, like, yeah, he'll be in the he'll be the MCU's official Matt Murdock.
He is now the
Fucking
MCU's
sneaky
official
bastard.
Matt Murdock, which means he's the MCU's official Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody loved him in that fucking role, so yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see if they do flat out try to, like,
It's funny
vaguely
that
mention the
the
events of the
only
shows.
the only main character from the Netflix shows that people didn't love in the role is the one who probably showed the most improvement over the seasons he was in the role. So at this point, they might as well just bring back all of the Defenders.
Mm.
Does that mean we might see the return of David Tennant as the Purple Man? Oh God.
Well, I mean, if they do ignore the canon of the Netflix shows and just bring the actors back, then I don't see why not.
I mean,
Oh,
I would
all
have
of
to
my
know how
nightmares.
they handle the multiverse in this movie, and that's not me asking you to spoil me. That's just I'm not. We would need to watch No Way Home to be in a position to answer that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that another time because I haven't seen it yet. I'm probably not going to see it
Mm.
until it comes to video.
Yeah,
Because I
that's
don't
fair.
go to theaters anymore.
I
Yeah.
know that one of the apps on my Roku, I forget which one, but I could basically pay city movie theater prices, like $20 to watch No Way Home on my Roku. So I've been considering that.
I'm not willing to pay city theater prices. I'm
See,
willing to
I
pay
used
a
to have to
rental.
pay I used to have to pay $18 plus another $10 for popcorn and a soda to watch a movie. So
Yes.
paying $20 to watch a movie I can pause is not as bad as it would be otherwise.
Yes, but you're watching it on a freaking 2,000-inch screen. As opposed to your freaking 25, 27-inch monitor screen.
Mm.
That's another part of the difference too, is you're getting your home sound quality and your home video quality. Yes, you get the
Yeah.
ability to pause.
On the other hand, I can turn on captions, which most theaters don't include. So there's pros and cons.
Yeah,
Mm.
honestly, I'm willing to pay rental prices. I'm willing to pay maybe a little more than rental prices for a new release, but I'm not willing to pay theater prices.
And I just realized we're 84 minutes in, and we
Yes,
have one more big talk to go.
I was aware of that. I was about to stop that when you got me on the topic of theater prices. Yes, last thing, let's try to make it quick.
Yep.
Because I think we've already talked
Um.
about this one a little.
Yeah. I forget. It might have been when you saw it.
Yeah, it probably
It
was
could
when I
be
saw
right.
it.
Yeah. But yeah. I forget. Yeah, well, no, it would have been in this order. So yeah, I saw Dune like a little after like the Monday after Christmas. Um and yeah, I honestly really liked it. I feel like some people will be put off by the slow pace, but honestly I kind of preferred it because I'm like, well, I don't know anything about Dune. I have never seen the David Lynch version.
You should. You should.
Well, that's just it. A part of it is now I will probably see it now, but I did not want to have that in my head when seeing this one. So I basically was like, I'll wait. I'll let this stand on its own 2 feet, or stand or fail on its own 2 feet
I know
for
at
me,
least
and
I
then
know a
go
few
back and watch
people
the
who
other
have
one.
said that because they're a huge fan of the Dune novel and a huge fan of David Lynch. Out of respect for both of them, they're not going to watch his adaptation.
They're not going to watch whose adaptation? This one?
Lynch? No, the original.
They should. The original was a great adaptation. It's weird as hell, but it's great. The actors were great. I mean, yes, it's some of the acting is hammy to the extreme, which is kind of Lynch's style.
Mm.
But the first of all, the soundtrack to the original beats the hell out of this one. No disrespect to this one. This one's good. It's just the soundtrack to that one was epic. Um,
Now that I think about it, I feel like I read somewhere that like they actually used or considered using some of the music from the original, or like their own take on
I
or
think that
something,
was
but I
part
could
of
be
my
wrong.
review. I mentioned the fact that it sounded like the
Yeah.
composer from this was doing a kind of his own version of some of the themes
Hmm.
that were in there, but not all of them. And
Hmm.
it's still, and then by the middle of it, I I got that for like some of the Caledon themes and stuff.
Hmm.
But once you got to Arrakis, it's just his generic um soundtrack that he's been doing, and it's in generic industrial his industrial light sound that he did for Blade Runner 2049, and I'm like, eh.
Hmm. um. Yeah. Generally, when I was very much like, oh yeah, that's right. This main character is supposed to be actually a teenager, so it's a good thing they got an actor who at least, I forget if he actually is, but he at least looks more like one than than the actor who played. Oh my god, I can never remember his name, even though I've seen him in other stuff. Um, God, the actor who played him in the original.
Paul McLaughlin.
That's it. Um, Because like I've seen him in other stuff, but for whatever reason his name never sticks. But yeah, like the character's
Um,
supposed to be like what, 17?
the character's an unknown teenager
Ah.
age. It's
Hmm.
never really stated by anything because the events that happen um in the book take place over a few years.
Ah.
But it seems to always be it always seems to be compressed into a few months in the movies because you're trying to fit it
Hmm.
into a 2 to 4 hour epic. And by the way,
Yeah.
that the actor Timothy Chalamet is 26 years old.
Oh wow. I would honestly not have guessed that. He does actually look a lot younger, whether it's makeup or just the fact that he's so like small, like such a small build that he pulls it off. But yeah. Um
And when McLaughlin did Dune, um,
I think he would have been about the same age, maybe.
I'm checking. He was
Or a bit younger.
McLaughlin was born in 57. Dune was filmed in 1981. Or no, he was born in 59.
Ah.
So he would have been 22
Oh. And yet
when.
looked older somehow.
Well, yeah, you look at Timothy Chalamet's look. He still looks like a kid. He just has that eternally young look.
Yeah.
McLaughlin was one
Which
of those people that grew up, and he hit that final growth spurt and grew up. In his probably when he was around 20.
Which I guess might be why they went for that actor, because he was that old and still could pass for a teenager. So they're like, "Yep, you'll do." I don't think you're going to age
It's
anymore
always
for a while.
It's always scary when you do that because they could hit that final growth spurt between casting and filming.
Is that why the other lead is Peter Parker's girlfriend?
I will say that was kind of funny realizing, oh, I saw 2 movies with Zendaya in them. That's kind of interesting. Although she is barely in this one.
She's
really?
the hot topic.
Based on the marketing, I would have thought she was the main lead.
The problem is they only get about halfway through the novel before they end this movie.
All I just know is she was on literally every single piece of marketing I saw for this movie.
Well, it's because she's one of the bigger names involved. But yeah, like it is very much like what you see in the trailer is most of what she's doing.
Jason Momoa, Josh Brolin, Dave Bautista are in this, and they still put Zendaya on all the frickin' posters. And all 3 of those had more screen time than her.
But again, I guess it's just because she's like the big new name at the moment, kind of. She
is the hot topic.
She is the big one that people young enough not to have watched the original Dune will be interested in seeing.
I mean, I will admit, part of me was watching this and thinking, kind of wish Patrick Stewart had a cameo in this.
That would be nice. He was the original Gurney Halleck. I mean, he could have made a kick-ass Duke Leto. He really could. Well, actually, he might be a bit too old now.
Anyway, this is another one we're going overtime on.
Yeah, like I'll just wrap it up. This is to me. I really enjoyed this, and I am actually looking forward to part 2 when it eventually comes out.
Yeah, so am I. I'm just saying I'll still watch the original and love it. Okay, so finally Geek Talk is over. We really need to learn to meter ourselves with that. We honestly do. All right, so I guess we're up to the summary.
Yep.
I wish I had some water, but I don't. Bill, can you pull up a stopwatch?
Sure, 1 sec.
Just open Google and Google stopwatch.
Oh, it's faster for me to just open the one on my phone.
Oh,
and I'm ready. Count you down?
Yes.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so we start out in this little place called Elf Storage, which you hear a woman bitching at her coworker over the phone as a man comes in who sees the woman and has a smile on his face, which does hit me as love-struck stalker-ish kind of smile. She finishes this conversation. He finishes business, talks to her, and he then goes to his locker while the doctor in the TARDIS is trying to do a reset of the interior after all the damage it took during Flux. They wind up in apparently the same area, just as these other two are spotted, find Daleks appearing near them, which kill them. And then after finding them, the Doctor and the others are quickly killed as well. Only, then things start over again. Everybody starts realizing that things have started over again. They start making changes. The Daleks show up and kill them. This is the way most of this episode goes on. as the Doctor struggles to find a way to escape this time loop that they're stuck in, and the Daleks keep adjusting to what they're doing. Finally, the Doctor realizes she needs to throw the Daleks off their game and over adjust to their adjustment, and then readjust back before they can, and in the last second, basically sets up a giant bomb for the Daleks to blow up. Oh, I should also mention the Daleks are doing this because they're pissed at the Doctor with what happened to Flux and them blowing up their fleets, even though the Doctor have killed many, many more Daleks than that at once before. Um, anyway, she sets this bomb, takes off, um, and blows up the Daleks in the building, breaking the time loop. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, the two people that we first saw also begin to fall in love and start a kind of relationship. And Dan confronts Yaz about her feelings about the Doctor. That's about it. Did I really miss anything?
Carl. So nothing important.
No.
Hmm.
I covered the highlights and I did it in 2.5 minutes.
Yep. So stop not counting the bit of silence after I said go. 2 minutes and 25 and a half seconds.
I had 2:29, but that's fine.
Yeah, there was a bit of silence after I said go, and then there
I
was
think
that.
I think I was starting the stopwatch on my side too.
And there was the moment where you right before you said done, where I was like, I think he's done, and I hit lap.
Ah,
So that cut a couple seconds off.
okay.
But you didn't actually say anything after that.
Okay, so in what was a record summary for me, let's talk about what we liked about the serial. And Bill, you're first.
So I almost passed, but I guess I'll go with this, even though it's I think common enough in the Chibnall era, and that's the Daleks were actually intimidating, and that's kind of a holdover from the Moffat era where they were always used as a joke. But here they're really I have complaints about the Daleks, but they're not a joke here. They're not something that can just be hand waved and, used as a punchline or anything like that. So, good
Yeah.
on doing the bare minimum.
They are back to being the monsters that they originally were.
Yeah. Which is honestly the benefit of them being in the one-off specials rather than like within a series to a point.
Okay, so Alex, how about you? What did you like about the episode?
Um, I guess I just honestly I really like the setting because I feel
The
like it hasn't
corridors.
been I feel like it hasn't been since like what Dalek that we've had a Dalek story set in a single location.
Um,
Um
the majority of Army of Ghosts Doomsday was inside Canary Wharf.
true.
There was, I think, the one
Um
brief scene where the device goes outside, but that was
mhm,
a that was like a scene and a half at most.
right. So I guess it's more like this is the first since Dalek where there's only been like less than a full like invading force anyway. um but yeah, I guess no. Hmm. Well, I mean the Daleks are mainly based in that one building. But anyway, in any case, yeah, I just like the like not exactly claustrophobic because it's still a large building, but just the fact that they're stuck. It's just a handful of people stuck in a building with 3 Daleks at max. And while you could argue part of that might have been just, COVID, so we've got to make sure the cast is fairly small. I guess it's a matter of taking advantage of that and writing a story to fit, and it actually really worked.
All right. So I have to praise the direction of this. Okay,
Mm,
the time loop storyline is one that, science fiction has seen before. Star Trek did it a couple times, the Never Ending Poker Game episode. Um, It's been done in Stargate SG-1.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Legends of Tomorrow.
Usually what happens is the director will start recycling scenes. They'll be filmed the same way, done the same way. Here, the director chose to refilm those scenes and change the angles,
Mm-hmm.
which did make it seem more original. And I have to applaud them for that choice. Okay, let's talk about what we disliked about the episode. And I have, this is where my rant's going to come in. But Bill, you're first.
Okay, so I disliked that the plot seems to rely on the Daleks getting less and less effective over time. It's almost like they use the law of conservation of ninja, or I guess the law of conservation of Dalek. At first, there's the whole, Daleks learn, they're big and badass, and they're like, yeah, you can't use your magic wand to jam our weapons. And then by the fourth iteration, they're like spraying fire all around the corridor but can't hit one person in the back. And it's, if the Daleks did not get less effective over time, the entire plot would have fallen apart, and that is not good.
So you don't think it's a case of the people adapting, you think it's the Daleks de-adapting?
No, I think it's they set up this whole thing about the Daleks adapting, and then the Daleks didn't really adapt. Their aim got worse, and they started it almost was like the Daleks were going through the motions by the end. Maybe because we didn't really see them strategizing in the same way as we did the humans, but it seemed like the Daleks put up a big show about how they adapt and strategize, and then didn't do any of that.
Oh, I thought that third to last loop was pretty badass on the Daleks. The one where he shows up right in
where they
the
shoot them in the basement.
where shoots the power out, kills her in the elevator.
That's true. I guess the main thing that this complaint hinges on is the fact that they so effortlessly killed the Doctor in the beginning, but by halfway through or so, I forget which loop it was because I didn't write down each loop's details and it's been a few days. But by a certain point, they're literally like, usually Daleks can shoot somebody in the back if their person's running in a straight line. Here, we had people running in a straight line down a corridor. The Dalek was firing all over the corridor, but could not hit the one person in the back. And I was pissed off.
Suddenly,
maybe that's my least favorite scene more than a complaint then, but it felt like it applied to the general trajectory of the plot.
I feel like I let that slide just because they get killed every loop anyway. So when the main character shields kick in, I'm like, at least they've been killing them a few times. So
it's the final loop. The Doctor has gained plot armor. The companions have gained plot armor. Yeah. The other two characters still disposable, so watch your backs.
I guess for me, I would say I guess it's enough of an overall thing, but well, it's interesting that the TARDIS is causing the time loop. I was kind of disappointed that we fixed the TARDIS now, because I was almost thinking I was saying this when when we were getting closer to the end of the Flux stuff, was like, oh, well, now they've got to set up for the TARDIS shitting itself and kicking her out if they go that way. Which I guess, I hope this just is Chibnall saying, I'll take this back if Chibnall is using this as a way to say, no, I will not end my run the same way mine started, with the Doctor being ejected out of the TARDIS so it could reboot itself. But otherwise, it's just kind of oh, well, hopefully we don't then, because you've just reset the TARDIS anyway. and sorted out all the damage.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree. It felt like they were building up for a bigger problem slash more complicated solution than, oh, I'm gonna turn it off and turn it back on again.
yeah. Like again, it seemed like honestly, I was almost while watching the episode being like, "Ooh, is the TARDIS just gonna like fuck off and she'll be stranded on Earth until like it just comes back?" I don't know, like just she manages to find it again after regenerating,
Hmm.
or like whatever. So the special, she's just kind of stuck on Earth. But yeah,
Nope, they just wanted to get rid of that little detail. It's like, why do they even have that little detail?
Even though we know that the TARDIS has to regenerate in what, 2 more episodes?
Something like that, yeah.
yeah.
Because you know RTD is not going to use the same set.
Yep.
Mm.
So, now we get to my issue. So, they're trapped in a time loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
They
Ish.
they state the time loop is basically the size and shape of the building they're in, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. If that's the case, how did she keep receiving phone calls from her mother? How was she able to send a phone call?
Here's another question on that. She was calling, what, 6 minutes before the hour? Something like
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yes,
But
Mm.
eventually the time loop was started later than that, but she was still calling and having the exact same conversation.
correct.
Mm.
The phone
I
calls
mean,
don't make any sense to the time loop situation.
mm. I mean, I do wonder if it's a
Eventually,
matter of like,
even if they did
if
come
it's
through in the same thing, they should have been done about halfway through the episode
Hmm.
instead
mm.
of being the Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, I guess it would have made a bit more sense if, like, every time the loop restarted, she was immediately, like, once it gets past that mark, if she's just immediately resets and her mum's calling her and it's like, where the fuck were you? I couldn't get
Yeah.
through, sort of a thing.
Like by like the seventh loop, she should the mother should still remember having spoken to her at 11:54. So calling again at 11:57 or 11:58 is really weird.
Yes.
Hmm.
Even so, this whole thing would have only happened to the mother once. She's not in a
Yep.
time loop.
Hmm.
And I think they said, oh, the Daleks have found a way, and they never explained how the Daleks from their ship are able to
Managed to make it
participate.
to the beginning of the time loop.
Yes,
Hmm.
each time.
Yeah.
I mean, I can waive it with the Daleks because they have some knowledge of time travel, but the phone calls, both in and out, kind of break the whole time loop theory for me. It doesn't make any
Hmm.
sense.
I guess the funny thing is, in that sense, if you tweak some dialogue for when she's calling her out in like one particular scene later on and be like, and change the dialogue to like, I just talked to you a few minutes ago or something like that,
No,
then
it
that would have been
still doesn't.
interesting.
No,
But
it
yeah.
still doesn't make sense.
Mm.
Somebody trying to call somebody in a time loop should get no signal.
Mm.
Trying to call somebody outside a time loop would be no signal.
Or
Yeah.
I could kind of see if they were to say, okay, the causes of the time loop are localized, but it has residual effects across the entire planet. Because I think that would get rid of some of what you're saying, but it still, I think, would not resolve the fact that the time loop changes when it starts each time, and that would still have other repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would have had to tell her
Mm.
by like loop 4, be like, call me at 11:59 or whatever, and then it would have just kept going on after that because then they never would have actually talked again.
Yep. and that didn't happen. There was not enough forethought there.
Mhm.
So the whole phone call thing being the smoking gun bothers me.
Which I
Okay.
guess, given this was possibly purely Chibnall written, kind of fits, given that sci-fi is usually where he fumbles.
Okay. Favorite scene.
So favorite scene, I almost went with the one that the internet likes because after time I realized more of its significance. But since I'm going first, I'm going to go with the one that I really liked the first time I watched it, and I really liked the second time I watched it, and I didn't need anybody else to help me interpret it. And that is Dan running fucking circles around the Dalek.
Damn it.
Like, the one thing that Dan manages to completely nail is his first interactions with aliens every time. It was great with the Centaurans. It's great with the Dalek. The Dalek is so confused by Dan's attitude that he doesn't even think to exterminate him until Dan starts dodging him. He's like, well, if you're trying to exterminate me, I think I'd better speak to your manager. Daleks do not have a manager. Well, isn't that part of the problem?
It's just great.
Like, I was cracking up.
Yeah.
That was my favorite scene. I loved it both times. Because he had half of it planned out, and he just goes to town and just has that Dalek going around in circles until it finally realizes you're wasting my time. About time you figured that out.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Okay.
aware that that kind of contradicts what I've said about the Daleks earlier, but it's a great fucking scene, so it gets a pass.
Yeah.
All right, Alex.
We sort of mentioned it already, but I like that the scene where like the Doctor's given this big, yeah, we're gonna win speech, and then the Daleks just absolutely wreck their shit. Just to be like, because normally in like any other Doctor Who story, that would be like the turning point of like, yay, the Doctor's given a rallying cry, they're gonna win, and then they just immediately get demolished.
Right? Which one are you talking about?
It's the third time loop, the same one I was talking about. Where the Doctor just
In the
does
basement?
has the plan. Let's do this, team. And
Okay.
then the three Daleks show up, exterminate them all. The next time loop starts. They all take off, and a Dalek immediately appears.
So you're not talking about the one where they're lounging in Jeff's apartment, like, jokes
No.
on you. We have a great plan. You're not talking about that
No,
one.
no, not that one. The one where like she's
Mhm.
like one spawns in the lobby and she tries to get away in the elevator and they shoot out the lights and power.
Yeah, that's the
so
one.
She can't. Yeah, so she can't get away and she's just cowering in the corner of the lift. Because it's just like it's so like that's a like it's because it's like you would have expected in like most other stories the Doctor's given this very inspiring speech, which now means that they're gonna turn things around and win, and the exact opposite happens.
And get ruffle stomped. Yeah. Everywhere they turn, there's another Dalek. No, you're not supposed to be here. No, bam. Yeah. The power's off. The Doctor runs off to try to save somebody. The Daleks immediately turn out and exterminate the companions. Yeah, that was them clearing the chessboard quickly, and was why the Doctor was so freaking pissed after why the Doctor was so pissed after the end of that loop because she didn't like that they just completely shut down her momentum.
Yeah.
Oh, you've taken all of my favorite scenes. What have I got left? Jeff's fireworks. Just saying, it's not often that you manage to blow up the bad guys and then have a huge freaking New Year's fireworks display all rolled into one package.
Yeah. And that's probably the most New Year's thing to happen in any of these New Year's specials too.
True.
That's true. Yeah, they let off fireworks at exactly New Year's, pretty much.
So, least favorite scene.
The least favorite scene, I couldn't come up with a specific scene planning this. But I guess I'm gonna go with what I was talking about before, since it had such an impact on me. Where I'm trying to remember who it was running down the hallway. I think it might have been the doctor, and the Dalek just could not hit her in the back because it had, switched out its aiming module with a stormtrooper targeting module or something.
Would it help
And
if the
that
doctor
just
had been
irritated
doing
me.
something like
few.
serpentining? But
What's
no,
that?
I said, would it help if she was doing something like serpentining
I do
rather
not know
than
what
just
that
running
is.
straight? It's like where you're running side to side to try to keep the
Ah.
Well, I feel like in this particular case, that would actually be more detrimental because running side to side, you're more likely to get shot because these Daleks seem to be scatter shot.
Mm. And they have a machine gun, and they're talking about how much they're adapting. So I don't know if that would make me feel any better.
Mm.
Mhm.
Well, then there's absolutely no way somebody can run down the hall from a Dalek and you'd be happy.
Not really, not unless they had anti-Dalek armor, which, maybe the Sonic can do that now, but I wouldn't be happy with that either.
I'm sorry, Bill. At that point, plot has to happen.
Yeah.
And then if you're in a position where you're running down the hall with a Dalek behind you, the proper thing for you to do at that point is die. Like, other than that, it's just not feasible.
Yeah, again, like as I said earlier, this is one of those things where, like, normally that would probably bug me, but because the Daleks kill them so much in this episode, I'm like, I'll kind of let it slide.
Now, if you were to throw a fire extinguisher behind you and the Dalek hits that, and all of a sudden the hallway is filled with foam, and you use that to escape into the elevator, that would be one
Except that
thing.
wouldn't do crap through the Gatling blasts. That might stop a traditional Dalek, but not one of these Gatling gun suckers. All right, Alex, your least favorite scene?
I feel like I was wondering if I was gonna find a different one, but I'm just gonna go with when they're hiding in that one particular storage place and the whole thing about, this is just stuff that belongs to my ex-girlfriends. And as much as like the companions at first were like, well, this is kind of creepy, when God, I can never remember her name. But when the woman who runs the place like calls him out on how weird it is that he's keeping all this shit, the companions immediately turn around and like, oh well, that's a bit harsh. It's like, you're the one, like, Yaz is the one who asks, like, they're still alive, right?
Right.
Because they're all like, and yet they're calling her a bit harsh for outright calling this weird
It
behavior.
looked like they agreed with her until she actually said it, and then they were like,
Yeah.
wait, you're not supposed to say it.
It's very much that Marge Simpson, well, they're right, but they're not supposed to say it. Like, it's just like, yeah, she's not wrong. It is a bit weird that he has all this stuff from women he was apparently only maybe with it for a couple of days and shit. It's like, dude, maybe throw it all out.
And on a related note, he's shy enough that he spends 3 years stalking a girl without asking her out, and yet he seems to have these casual hookups often enough that he's filling up a storage locker with stuff people left
Yeah.
behind.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Hmm.
So I have two least favorite portions. The first one is actually part of that same scene, but for a different reason. We're supposed to think that a Dalek with a Gatling laser, and we have seen Daleks shoot through frickin' spaceship hulls before,
Hmm.
is going to have trouble shooting through a thin aluminum door to a storage
Hey,
locker.
this is in
Yeah.
it's in England. It's an aluminium door.
Whichever, it's not going to hold up to a Dalek blaster.
No, it's not.
And we
Yeah.
see that thing shooting into it, and it's just doing nothing.
Hmm.
I'm like,
they,
what
they,
the?
they, they forgot the door wasn't made of like triple reinforced titanium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that door should have been just done. And yet they're able to hold off that Dalek for minutes while they have this discussion in the safety of there, while the Dalek just
Yeah.
fumes outside.
Yeah. To that end, I'm almost kind of surprised that they only really lampshade so much as the Doctor saying like, "Ah, yes, a Dalek has defeated a very old door," and not just have the Doctor be like, "How have they not gotten through that yet?"
Yes. And so the other thing I didn't like is any scene where the two characters hook up, because that was the most awkward relationship I've ever seen. First of all, yeah, he's this weird, kind of creepy guy, and she's a complete and total bitch. There's no chemistry between them.
Which is
Hmm.
something that we talked about when the trailer for this episode came out.
Mm-hmm. I believe I said I hope they're not trying to hook these two up, because they look like they have no chemistry. And I was right. They don't have any
Mhm.
chemistry, and they tried to hook him up.
Hmm.
Yeah, that looks like another relationship that's going to last 4 days, and then he's going to be bringing her shoes to a storage locker
Mhm.
owned by somebody else, owned by the competitor across the street.
Yeah, something like that. All right, final thoughts.
So this episode, the main feeling I have toward it is that it kind of happened. It really feels like one of those like you know skip it and you miss nothing. Holiday specials like uh the Doctor, the Witch in the Wardrobe, or the Christmas Carol. It really does not contribute much. I know there were some decent moments, and like I know lesbian Twitter was fucking loving that one scene with Yaz basically talking about coming out with Dan. Um but like that is the most influential thing there, and it's barely a part of the episode. Maybe it's a part of the next episode or probably more likely the centenary special than anything, but it's not
Hmm.
even really something that they address in this episode, so it's hard to take that into account with the rating. Altogether, it just kind of feels like, okay, it happened. I didn't hate anything about it, but I didn't really like anything about it either. It's just kind of okay. It was an episodic Doctor Who story, and I cannot muster up any strong feelings about it, and that's pretty much it.
All right,
Hmm.
Alex.
Yeah, like it's kind of interesting because while I haven't rewatched either of the previous New Year's specials, thinking more about this one, while I don't hate it or anything, I think I like it, but I don't, I mean, for one thing, I'd very easily say that um Revolution of the Daleks is better. I haven't seen Resolution in quite a while, so I wouldn't be able to say that, but I would say I probably prefer it to this as well. But even then, I still like it. I like the whole idea of the time loop getting smaller, so it's not a matter of they always have the same amount of time to try and figure everything out. Um, even though, yeah, it's a matter of this is a sci-fi plot written by someone who sci-fi has never been his strong suit, so there are going to be holes you can poke in it pretty easily. But I would definitely say this is still not that the bar is very high, but I would still say this is one of the better Chibnall written uh, stories.
All right. So, like a lot of Chibnall's work, I feel this needed to have another pass go on it. Somebody needed to proof this and edit out some of the holes. And I think they would have really been better off dropping the whole hookup end of the plot line and deal with the rest of and give more time to the rest of it.
Kind of
Because
seems like that so-called romance plot was the main, like that's what they started the script with and built out from that.
Yet it's the worst part of the script. It's awkward and doesn't feel good, but the rest of it is interesting. This was directed well, it was acted well, the special effects were fine, but I really feel like the writing was a little bit lackluster. As Bill said, this comes off like a regular episode, which is fine, but it's just nothing of note. There's nothing to make this outstanding. And with the holes in it, with the whole time loopholes and plot armor being used heavily, does feel like it does become a bit painful. All right, we've got 3 people voting. Let's see how we do. Bill.
3.0.
Alex.
I'll be slightly nicer and I'll give it a 3.5.
Oh. As it was, it would have been rating, I think, about a 4 if it wasn't for these holes. I think I'm gonna agree with Alex and give this a 3.5. It's was a little more than it happened to me, but not much. And that will make us correct with the average out to a 3.3, which will put us in the rankings not very high. It will be 310 out of 411 things reviewed.
Oof.
It is on par with The Space Pirates. It is better than Planet of the Daleks, In the Forest of the Night, Evil of the Daleks, Modern Undead, The Massacre, The Ascension of the Cybermen, The Timeless Children, and not as good as Earthshock. So there you go, 310 out of 411 things reviewed. That's all we have to say about Eve of the Daleks.
Comparing it to holiday specials, it looks like it's not quite as good as Planet of the Dead and better than The End of Time.
I would argue that last one, but there were some people that hated that.
All right, so if you're watching on YouTube, please let us know in the comments what did you think of the Eve of the Daleks, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Also, if you're watching on Twitch, don't forget to follow to get our streams every Tuesday night.
All right, next time, while we wait for the next special, we are going to go back to the world of Big Finish. Let's see how Chris Eccleston does in audio. It's Big Finish, Ninth Doctor Adventures, Sphere of Freedom, written by Nicholas Briggs and starring Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor. We will see you next week.